Hello, can you hear me? Okay, I hope everybody can hear me, right? Yes, perfect. Okay, so it feels very lonely when I'm alone on the stage. So welcome to the last part of the session of this event. So the last part is the roundtable, and I will start with a very short introduction on gender bias in gender diversity in science, and then we will go on with the questions. I will invite some of the speakers on stage, and we will do that with subgroups because we are only allowed to be up to 6 people on stage, okay? So I'll try to share my screen, and I hope this will work. Does it work? Yes, perfect. So I'm sharing my screen, and I hope, actually, everything works. Okay. Okay, perfect. So good evening again. First of all, thank you all for attending this event. I am Nadia, and I will be the moderator of the roundtable. But before starting with the roundtable, I would like to hide this message first. And I would like to start with this very short introduction on gender bias in science. So, as you may have noticed, the title of the event is Neuroscience is a girl's thing, but not a woman's yet. And we chose this title to highlight how gender bias is dependent on the stage of a woman's scientific career. However, I would define gender bias as a two-step process that starts even earlier than the PhD. So the first question that one should answer is how many girls have been told that they're good in sciences, in languages or humanities, but not in hard sciences. And there have been indeed many studies showing that science tends to be associated with men that are thought to be better in math or in physics. And even young girls, when asked to think of a scientist, they tend to think of male scientists. Now, of course, many girls actually overcome this bias and they end up studying neuroscience, physics, biology, or engineering. Now, the second part of the problem arises when women actually decide to pursue a career in science. And considering our field, cognitive neuroscience, I guess we all know many female PhD students, and sometimes more than male ones, actually. But later on, where do all these female PhD students go? Because taking into account the gender ratio during the PhD years, we would expect to see these female PhD students ending up in PI positions. But as I will show you in the next slide, this is unfortunately not the case. So yes, neuroscience seems to be a girl's thing, but not a woman's yet. These are data from the Centers of Research in Catalonia here in Spain. And in this graph, you can see, actually, you can see how the imbalance starts already at the postdoc level, but it gets more prominent as we get to higher levels of the academic hierarchy. And this data show that there is parity between men and women at the PhD level. However, around this, the postdoc years begins the gender imbalance that keeps increasing in the detriment of women until they reach only 27% of group leader positions. So as you see, the number of women at high-level posts in science is not proportional to the number of women qualified to do so. Of course, the causes are diverse, and they have not only to do with maternity leave or family reconciliation, but instead, they seem to be inherently tied with a system that expels the women by not offering them the right environment or by unconsciously exercising bias against them. As you all know, an important part of a scientist's career are the publications, and it has been shown in these two studies that that there is a gender imbalance also in the acceptance rates of research studies. So in the left figure here, you can see the percentage of accepted submissions shown by the gender of the corresponding first and last author. And as you can see, manuscripts with female last or corresponding authors were less likely to be accepted, while the gender of the first author did not actually affect acceptance rates. But more interestingly, as you can see in the right figure, this gender disparity was more evident when the review panel consisted only of male reviewers. A more recent study showed this systematic disparity in gender representation in several aspects of academic scientific life. So apart from the underrepresentation of women as last authors, you can see that till 2016 and till 2018, respectively, seminars and conferences consisted only of male speakers. So why do we need to care about all that? On the one hand, it's a matter of fairness and social justice. Women need to work harder to achieve the same and for less money. And this applies not only in women, but in all minorities in science. However, I want to highlight another very important benefit of promoting diversity in science. Diversity drives scientific innovation, and ignoring sex differences or gender differences can have a negative impact on the contributions of science to society. Let me explain. So, in the biomedical sciences, researchers rely on animal models to understand diseases, for example. Yet the majority of this research, as you can see here, is conducted in male animals. However, as you can see in the right figure, there are huge sex differences for diseases such as anxiety, depression, or Hashimoto's thyroiditis that are more prevalent in women. And nevertheless, people are just studying male animals. And partly as a result, women may experience more severe effects from new treatments. So there is this over-reliance on male animals, even for animal models of human diseases that are more prevalent in women. And this bias has been identified and analyzed by Annalise Berry, a woman, and she actually started a movement with one very, very clear message, that including female animals in these studies would allow us to assure that both women and men benefit equally from basic research studies. So yes, apparently diversity also improves science. So what can we do as community or as individuals to make science more diverse and inclusive? First, we have to be aware of our own biases. You can test your own bias and make sure, for example, that the work you cite in your publications is gender balanced. And you can use these two toolboxes, CleanBib and the Gender Citation Balance Index tool. We can also track the speaking proposition in your science conferences, report all male panels, and make sure that women will take part in the scientific dialogue. And actually, Anne Tresland made this amazing list, an extensive list of women neuroscientists based on the research field, and this can be used actually as a first reference point for conference organizers. But most importantly, women are not the only underrepresented community in science. So we need to find our allies. And there are many more initiatives on diversity, focusing on the underrepresentation of ethnic groups and gender, for example, the Black in Neuro communities and the Diversify STEM conference movement. There are many more initiatives that have been running over the last few years. I urge you to check the website of Anne Urai. She provides an extensive and an amazing list of studies and initiatives on gender bias. And I would like to close this slide with an initiative that started here in Spain. It's an initiative of the Spanish Association of Women Researchers and Technologists, and it's called the No More Matildas. So it took its name from the Matilda effect, that in turn took its name from Matilda Jocelyn Gage, who was the first activist to denounce the injustice of systematically ignoring the findings of brilliant women scientists. In fact, the female presence in educational materials here in Spain barely reaches the 7.6%, which is a statistic that inevitably perpetuates stereotypes. So many women fell into oblivion and could not become role models for girls that were made to believe that science is only for men. So this movement aims at bringing all these female scientists back to where they belong, starting with textbooks. Now the question is there any improvement over the last few years? So there are some good news, but apparently we are not there yet. This graph represents the past, present, and estimated future gender ratio of authors on academic publications listed on PubMed based on the scientific field. On the left part, you can see all the disciplines that have been included. So each dot represents a discipline. And as you can see, in most disciplines, in most research fields, there is a marked gender imbalance in the detriment of women. On the right part of the figure, I just selected 4 disciplines: social sciences, psychology, behavioral sciences, and brain. And as you can see, the situation has been improving over the last 20 years, from 2000 to 2020. But in our fields, psychology, behavioral sciences, and particularly brain, there is still room for further improvement. And actually, in the case of brain, as you can see, the estimations show that even in 25 years from now, women will be still underrepresented. So I would like to close this short introduction with some words of Jennifer Raymond in her impactful article on Nature, that she also acknowledged that women's behavior is just as biased as men's. So closing her article, she mentions that denial that bias exists gives it more power. I am not proud of my unconscious bias against women in science. However, I know that I must first recognize my own bias to overcome it with deliberate practices that suppress its effects. I urge you to join me. So with this event, we urge you to join us in this attempt to make science more diverse and inclusive. So we will start now with a roundtable. And for those that have just connected, we have an excellent and amazing team of women neuroscientists at different stages of their career. Raquel Aparicio, Stephanie Strom, Janina Pudu, Marta Portoiano, Emily Thomas, Anna Marcekova, Axel Kalkus, Sophie Herbst, Kostadina Kilteni, Maria Macamolley, I hope I pronounced it correctly, and of course, Sonia Kotz. So the structure of the roundtable would be as follows. First, we will discuss about gender bias in science, and I would like to invite some of the speakers on stage to share their experiences on that. And second, we will focus on how we can foster gender diversity in science by proposing initiatives that could help in this direction. During the roundtable, all of you, you have the opportunity to ask questions in the Ask a Question chat. And some of these questions will be addressed to the speakers at the end of the discussion. Feel free to tweet about this event using this hashtag, and here is the information if you want to tag us. Thank you very much. Okay. Okay, let me invite some of the speakers online. Okay, perfect. Hi again.
Hi again.
Okay.
Great job. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you.
Very nice.
Thank you. Okay, I think I hope that Mariam can also, yeah, she.
Hi, Sophie.
Hello.
Hello, all of you.
Yeah, Constantina is here too. Hi.
Hello.
Okay, and I would also like to invite, let's see. Yes. Perfect. Okay. So, first of all, thank you again for accepting our invitation. It was an amazing morning, actually, with all the talks. And is everybody online? I mean, I think Axel is missing. He's connecting. Yes, they are connecting. Okay. So I invited you first, so the senior speakers, let's say, because I would like to start the introduction, this roundtable with a more general discussion. And I would like to just invite you to share your own experiences in gender diversity in academia so far throughout your career, and whether you have encountered problems that you have not anticipated so far, and how you have dealt with these problems. So, Sonia, would you like to start?
Yeah, definitely. The question is, where do I start? And,
Yeah, I guess so.
you know, it starts from the fact that, and I don't think that was gender specific, but maybe also we often have to consider the time when things happen. I wanted to start working interdisciplinary at a point in time when it was very clear that you had to have a particular degree. And it was not possible for me to do that in the country of my origin, which is Germany, because I was not a psychologist. I was not an MD. I was a theoretical linguist at the time who wanted to do brain research because she also had very high interests in biology. And I actually do owe it to a male professor who said, pack your bags and leave. Go to a country where they open the door to diversity. And at the time, this was America, even though at times today, this doesn't sound like it anymore. I did get an opportunity that I don't think I would have had at the time in Europe. So, but this is a temporal thing. So when exactly things happen, I felt I had a good trajectory then. I also felt I had a good trajectory coming back. But when it came to trying to enter academia in Europe again at a particular age, I did not get any chance anymore. And there's a lot of diversity within Europe, how long you can actually enter academia as not just as a female, but also as a male. So I think there are multiple things. There are multiple biases along the path. This was just career related. And for me, that ultimately meant with every move that I wanted to make, I actually moved. And that comes along with very heavy constraints on your family life and your children and your partner. And I have to say, I'm eternally grateful that I had a partner who was very flexible and supported the fact that I wanted to do what I feel I want to do. But I think these are, I mean, I think it goes far beyond us being biased towards women and their development, but it's for me, there are constraints that come, when in my career did I experience what? and what did it take to get to where I am, involved, for example, moving and being willing to be flexible.
Yeah, flexibility, it's an important part of in science. I mean, we are, I think most of us, we live in a country that it's not our country of origin, right? So, Kostadina, what is your experience in that?
Yes, thank you. So I come from Greece. It's important to note because I think that the society in Greece is very sexist, and this is something I didn't realize it until I left the country. So I studied in engineering. I entered university in 2002, and already the situation there was quite okay. So it was like 60% male, 40% female. Not a very dramatic effect. But I think as soon as I came to Sweden, so now I'm in Sweden, I start to realizing how many biases I had about myself. And growing up in a very sexist environment, I mean, culturally speaking, where women don't follow so much the science career, or they do a PhD and they stop, exactly as Nadia mentioned. Like, it rang so many bells, this slide that you showed.
I can confirm that, yeah.
Yes, and so now I am the Department of Neuroscience in Karolinska Institute in Sweden. And Sweden is one of the countries that really acknowledges at least the existence of gender biases and tries to take actions. Even like that, if you see the number of the PIs at the department level, you like the numbers are quite disappointing. There are very, very few female women in academia. An experience I wanted to share with you was well, I was very lucky. I had a male PhD supervisor and a male postdoc supervisor, and both of them were really supportive. And I recall one of them once told me that women are so efficient. Sometimes they are much more efficient than men. But the experience I want to share with you is that I was writing a grant proposal recently, and I asked the university to give me some feedback on my application. And the main feedback I got was that most of the female applications that they receive to provide some feedback, they don't the applicants do not present themselves. They don't show a lot of confidence in their application, and they clearly see this effect between male and female applications. I think it's very important that we believe in ourselves and to acknowledge the biases that we might have about ourselves as well.
Sophie, you did your PhD, if I remember correctly, in Germany, and now you're living in France. Have you different experiences between the countries, or what is your experience so far?
I tried to be brief, so I did my PhD in Berlin, yes, and I think I was lucky to be in a rather diverse environment there due to the city, but also due to the graduate school in which I was. The moment when I hit the wall was when I had my first child during my PhD, and that was really when I felt I was experiencing a clash of expectations. That German society is a bit paradoxical in the way that you have a lot of regulations for paternity leave. So fathers can take paid paternity leave. You can share flexibly between the parents. But then on the other hand, the expectations, especially towards mothers, are extremely high. And still today, most mothers stay at home for at least a year, some still for 3 years. So I really felt that the expectations that were brought up towards me I couldn't meet them, and I couldn't reconcile them with my wish to work in science and to finish my PhD. And I also found this very unfair because my partner didn't have the same problem. So amongst us, we had discussed, and we're both in academia, and I got all the negative comments, or it's often in the small things. It's when you come to conference and people ask, where did you leave your children? Like, they're with their father, fine. But this hurts, especially for the for the first time when you still try to figure that out. And yeah, I mean, I had amazing mentors, and I think I wouldn't be here anymore if I hadn't had them, both male and female, and I still do. But still, I think there's not so many role models of women that combine both having children and a career in academia, and it's still not easy to find many role models. And now in France, what I think is much better there is that women work. It's very acknowledged. So I've never had the question where I left my children when I show up at work or at a conference, which doesn't mean that the French society is free of biases or sexism, but at least that's an aspect that I enjoy a lot. And also the childcare system is very well made, and there's no problem of finding childcare and paying for it.
So at any moment during your career, I mean, with the first child during the PhD, you had this concern that did this discourage you in continuing with science at any point?
Well, I guess I had to learn that I couldn't compare myself at the same time to the male colleagues without children and to the full-time mothers. Mm-hmm. So that's what I was trying, and that didn't work. So I had to find my own way of, like, my day still only has 24 hours. So sometimes I go home at 5, but that doesn't mean that I'm lying on the couch. So I have to justify this for myself, that I leave early, or, you have to find your own way, and also decide how much time you want to spend with your children on your work. That's what I meant, that there's not so many role models there yet from whom you can learn. And that's also, of course, a very personal question.
Okay. I would also like to ask Axel now, because I remember you tweeted about this event, and you posted on your tweet that now as a young PI, same I guess would be for Constantina, because she also started recently with her lab. So congrats for that to both of you first.
Thanks.
So you posted that now as a young PI, you see a whole new dimension of being a woman in science. So I would like if you can share this, I don't know, the fear or concerns that you may have now with all this responsibility that this post may have.
Sure. Yeah, it's interesting. So just so you know a little bit more about me. So I graduated from my PhD in Brussels in 2015, and then I moved around for 3 postdocs to the US, the UK, and France. And I'm lucky enough that I found a position back in Brussels, so I'm back home, basically. And I have a partner, but we don't have children. And we don't want to, but that's another question, and that's another battle. It's funny because I was really thinking about this, and I really anticipated and thought about this, and I feel like I am aware that there's a lot of bias and that it's a real struggle. Full disclosure, I don't think I suffered from discrimination or difficulties because we don't have children, so I do have a lot of freedom there, and I can actually compare with men. I mean, you know what I mean. I can compare with my peers without feeling that I have another life that I need to combine and integrate into my professional life as well. I can still spend a lot of time working on it, and also you don't have this workload, I guess, or the double workload between professional life and personal life. So I do acknowledge that I'm very lucky there. But still, 2 weeks after I started back home, I was at the coffee machine, and then just, waiting. And it's funny because I've been abroad for 5 years, so I don't know many people here anymore. I mean, I know some of the PIs, but I don't know the PhD students and the postdocs. And then there's this PhD student who comes in the kitchen and asks who I am. And so I say, well, I'm a professor because I'm allowed to say I'm a professor. And the guy looked at me and he was like, but you look so young. And I was really like, but you look so old for a PhD student, but I didn't say it because I'm well behaved. But it was really, I think it says a lot about my feeling of legitimacy, if that's a word, that I've earned this place, I've worked for it. They didn't give it to me like by chance, but still I feel that I'm not entirely legit, and that I can't speak as openly as I want to sometimes, and that there's a lot of hierarchy here. I don't know, it's probably different in different countries, but funnily enough, they've recently hired 4 new female PIs, but all of the senior PIs are male, and you can feel that it's very different. I mean, obviously, sure, they're more senior, they have more experience, but there's also something else, that we're still expected to behave and just be quiet and say yes, and I don't know, it's very implicit. So yeah, I can't say that I've suffered from any kind of discrimination or unmanageable expectations or anything like that, but I'm very sympathetic, and I think it's a real struggle, and I want to make sure also, because for me it's probably going to be different as I grow older and evolve in my career to other female peers, and I also want to pay a lot of attention to that and make sure that my choices don't influence others or don't impede on others. So yeah, it's also, well, it's very different approach, but
yeah. Costadina, I would also like to ask again about the being. I just invited Anna also. Hello, Anna. Just one question for Costadina. So you, as a young PI, also, how is the experience? I mean,
first I recall the story. It was during my postdoc. I'm hearing the others. I just wanted to share. I remember I had applied for this Marie Curie scholarship, and I was very happy when I got awarded. I have tried very hard for this application, and I recalled when another person made a comment to me and told me, "Yeah, you know, you got it because you're a woman and you are from Greece." And it hurt so much. It was, I think this was the most, let's say, insulting comment I have ever received. And it's very sad because you might believe it for a little bit, and this is what I want to stress before. Now for the PI, I had a similar experience with Axel, not with PhD students in the coffee machine, but with administration people, that whenever I was going to ask for their help, they many times they thought I was a student or like a PhD student. So when I was saying, you know, I have my own group and I'm here a junior PI, it was a little bit awkward that moment, but they should know about, right? Besides that, I think at the departmental level, I never experienced something that I could call as an example of gender bias. As I said before, there's a big number of male PIs, and I agree with Axel with senior male PIs, so very few senior female PIs in my department. And yes.
Okay. Now, Anna, you're the only postdoc here. So I guess, well, we all know what the experience of doing a postdoc entails, moving to other countries, changing your whole life for short-term contracts, maybe, I don't know. So what is your, I mean, have you ever had this these thoughts of not continuing with a postdoc, with a career in science, because of all the uncertainty that the postdoc entails? And was this affected by the fact, I don't know, by the reconciliation, maybe with family, with partner, with children? What is your experience on that?
Trying to unmute myself. So thanks a lot, and thanks to all of you for sharing your experience. It was really great to hear this. So I think, yes, to answer your question directly, yes, I constantly have these doubts whether it's going to be possible to continue my career also within, let's say, reasonable limitations I put on where my career will go on. So, for instance, geographical limitations. So, indeed, I'm thinking about it almost every day, to be honest. Yeah, I think I was really lucky to have moved for my postdoc to a country where also my partner lives. So this was my conscious decision, and I think I'm really happy, and I was really glad to do it. Similarly, as Axel, I don't have children, and I don't want to. So it's my choice, which is a personal choice. So I think, with this respect, I'm really lucky to be much more flexible and in making certain decisions, and I have a supportive partner who also supports me. But yeah, indeed, I feel a bit lonely here as the only postdoc, but so I can't speak for all the female postdocs, but I think it's indeed a very difficult time where you have to make very conscious decisions about how to continue, and you need a lot of support of other people to continue. And thankfully, I think I have this support. So you also have to, I think, consciously reach out for this support and tell people, yes, I'm here, and this is my aim to continue in academia and doing research. Because I think sometimes people have a lot of implicit assumptions, maybe, which you have to somehow make more verbal and verbalize. So I think that also helps me to learn to actually really kind of make this explicit for me and also for others. That yes, I'm searching for opportunities in academia and I want to build my career. Because I think sometimes, I'm not saying that, for instance, male PI may have some implicit assumptions about this. And I think what's particularly interesting for me is that during my PhD, I actually haven't realized much this importance of the gender bias. I think it was also thankful, for instance, for having Sonia as a natural role model out there, because Sonia co-supervised my PhD, and some other people. Also, our graduate program was very balanced. But when I arrived to Ghent University to do my postdoc, I realized that out of 14, I think, professors, only one of them is female. So indeed, there was like a drastic gender imbalance, which kind of just is out there. It's not very explicit. I think there are not many explicit things which would point to any type of discrimination. It's just more this lack of role models and having this kind of implicit imbalance being present out there.
Okay, thank you. So I have a last round of questions for you, and then I will go on with the junior neuroscientists. So I would like to start with Sonia. So you have a huge experience in science. You hold a chair in translation and cognitive neuroscience in Maastricht, in the University in the Netherlands. And well, you have a huge experience, let's say. So I would like to ask you whether you have noticed indeed this pattern of increased gender imbalance as you go to higher level posts in science. Because the data I've showed you in the introduction, and also my experience, I can see that I meet many female PhD students, but it's not that common. I mean, I'm lucky because I have a female supervisor, but it's not that common to see women in high-level posts in science.
Mm-hmm. I think that's in principle very true, but I also have to say that it very much depends. For example, in our domain, it depends at times very much on the focus of the research. There are certain domains that are really strong with female representation and others are less so. I so happen to be now at a university where I feel gender balance is at times even tilting in the other direction, which is fabulous. But that does not mean that there is not bias going on. And you encounter that in professional discussions about decision-making and so forth. And the thing that I still find of a challenge at times is indeed, I think Axel mentioned that, well, how straightforward can you be? Because in many ways, you should be able to say exactly the same thing and as straightforward as men do. But, you know, I catch myself at times being very polite and measuring my words while I want to say no, absolutely not. And I am getting more and more to the point where I do that, but very often feel like people think, oh, I have a bad day, or yeah, what's wrong with her today, or what's happening here? So, and it's not that you're going to be less polite. It's just that you have an opinion and you should be able to raise your opinion very clearly like everyone else. Whether it's a man or a woman, I don't care. It's about being able to say what you think needs to be said. And that's a hard lesson to learn, but I think it's worth learning it. And I think we should do more about this and to generate awareness that we should be able to do this and that we don't have to politically dance all the time. I was part of a growing up in science discussion just recently, and someone asked me, what would you want to learn if you were to go back to being a PhD student? And I said, I would like to learn about politics. I would like to learn about political dialogue, because these are skills that we don't learn about. We either develop them in our own way, or we take models from other people. But in principle, there's a way to deal with this, and we should learn more about it.
I agree.
So it's a communication skill that we may have to build up more. Not so much to be heard, but to be clear about what needs to be said.
Yeah. Sophie, you're also a junior PI at the group with, well, you also have a female supervisor, let's say, Dr. Virginie van Wassenhof. So have you seen this pattern that we have been discussing as you moved from PhD to junior PI?
Yes, I have, but since I've also moved countries, there were
different
trajectories. So right now in France, what I enjoy there is that the structure is a bit more distributed. So what we call a lab is actually a group of like 60 people, and there are 5 teams, one of which is ours. And out of these 5 teams, there are 2 female team leaders, and each team can have multiple PIs. So it's a bit less hierarchical in that sense that you have one PI and a very clear hierarchy. So it's much more distributed. That said, everything that Sonja just said about the biases and meetings and being perceived as aggressive when you speak up, these things, of course, are also there. And yeah, I don't know how to overcome it other than practicing, or if there's any institutional way to help women to overcome these biases or speak up.
But I guess there are some like equality policies depending on the university and the country. Have you ever, I don't know, what's the situation in France? I guess it's the same in Germany, right? In terms of equality policies and maternity leave, for example.
That's a bit different. So I had my children in Germany, so maybe I missed things in France, but in Germany, what is very important is that the fathers can take paternity leave paid, and in France, they can only take 10 days, and the rest is for the mothers. So I think it's a problem. In terms of equality in like anti-discrimination laws and selection, I don't see a difference. And
okay.
I don't know if that's the problem. To me, the problem is more the implicit biases. So we select female and male students at every level, but then we really think the problem is more why don't they stick around at equal proportions? So
okay.
I think the laws are there, but
okay, thank you all for this discussion. If you allow me now, I will invite the juniors, and we will continue for the second part of the discussion, which is the second topic about what we can do to overcome all these problems. So I will see you again soon.
thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, let me invite the juniors. Where are the juniors? Stephanie, I think also, I was trying, I don't know if Mariam is connected. I tried to invite you, Mariam. I don't know if you can hear me, but apparently you had some connection issues. Hello.
Hello, are we in the green room or are we live?
No, we are live, Steph. Okay. Let's invite the girls.
Hi.
Hello.
Hey. Hello again. Thanks for the nice talks. And thanks for agreeing to participate in the roundtable as well. So I would like to start with Stephanie and Emily, because we all three have a female supervisor. Stephanie and me, we have the same supervisor. And I would like to ask you if the fact that you have a female supervisor somehow has affected your experience in science so far, and if it has affected, how do you see your future in science? Emily, would you like to start, because you are the invited here?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so I was trying to think about this, and I was trying to think about like what my experience is like with my female supervisor versus like other PhD students. And just to like add a little point onto what the other people are saying, I actually struggled to think of like a PhD friend who didn't have a female supervisor at our uni. I think that's mainly because like at Birkbeck, it's quite focused on like psychology and development, and so like actually there is actually probably more female PIs than male, but then higher up, all of the like head of department roles are like for men. So anyway, I just wanted to bring that in there. So yeah, I was trying to think of like like what the difference would be between a male and female supervisor. I think the main thing is that like it kind of gives you that kind of like role model of I've got a female supervisor who is good at what they do, and is successful. So it kind of gives you that like perspective of like you can be a female and in this position and be doing really good research. And also my supervisor has kids, so it kind of gives you that like just like experience of like how females can still manage to do like a really good job, but also have kids and also like manage all of that time stuff. And I think like one of the main things is like how flexible like academia can be with time. So like I know like we've had like our seminars used to be like in the evenings, but they switched it because like a load of female guys couldn't make it because or like going to look after their kids. So now it's a lunch, everyone can make it. Stuff like that is quite good when you've got like a lot of females. So I think it's cool to having a female supervisor. It's cool to see that like how you could be in the future, like how you can manage all of this stuff together. So I think it's quite nice.
Steph, you have the same experience?
Yeah, I mean, I think in our lab, because we have many women both on the PhD level and also our supervisor, and there are other PIs as well. I mean, for me, it was really clear, like a clear difference from previous working environments, that there's like the absence of overt sexism. I mean, of course, we all have biases and we struggle with biases, but like implicit stuff. But because we have a good gender balance, we don't have any problems with people being overtly sexist. And I don't think that's a given, because I've definitely seen that happening previously in other working environments where they're more male dominated. And of course, it's also nice to have role models, like, and you'll become more aware of what the implications are of being a woman in academia. I think like it can also be daunting, because I think that I have such clear examples of what how hard it is, you know, to be like, you know, you can see how much people work and how much women have to work more to get to the same point. So it's inspiring and it's also daunting, I think.
Yeah, of course, I guess now with all the working from home for people with families, it must have been even worse in the case of women.
Yeah. I mean, I was kind of like thinking when Constantina earlier said that she found it hurtful when someone said that she got the grant because she's a woman. Like, I understand that's hurtful, but also people should really just, like, even if there was a quota, which I don't think there is for that, but like, it's only justified because it's so much harder to get to this position in the first place as a woman. And people should like give extra credit for being a woman and having made it to the same point, no? Because you overcome so many more biases on the way. So
that's true.
That's like, yeah, that's what I think when I see female PIs. Like, I think, oof, they worked so much more than male PIs in the same position.
Marta Portellano and Janina, you also, I mean, in our department, we have the majority of the PIs, actually, we are pretty lucky, are women. And Marta, you work at the hospital and you are surrounded basically by female doctors, so female role models. So how this experience, this working environment has shaped your experience so far, and how do you see the future depending on that?
Yeah, so this actually influences me to see females surrounding the environment where I work, because actually, yeah, so I'm working at the hospital, and at the hospital there are lots of women professionals working there. And yeah, as you say, in the brain lab, actually there are we are surrounded by women also. But I mean, yeah, this influences me, but anyway, it's still what we said before. I mean, I'm now a PhD student, and I have the roles of PhD students and also from female people working at the hospital, but it's not like the next step after getting the PhD. I mean, it's not like the role that needs to be there for me to be influenced. I don't know if I explain myself, but anyway, in regarding to the hospital, this is also good for children, actually, I think, because the new generation that are coming to the hospital and see lots of women working there, this actually acts as a role for them to see themselves.
That's a good point of that. That's true, because in the hospital, where you're working, there is also a part of research. So these children, I guess, seeing actually female scientists working, doing investigation, clinically oriented, but still investigation research. There,
it's science anyway. So yeah, I think this is a good point, but more for new generations than for me, actually, because I will not be working at the hospital, I think so. But yeah.
Janina, would you like to share with us your thoughts on that? How this environment has influenced you so far?
I don't know, because I have to come back to Chile when I finish the PhD. So I don't know if I can respond about how I see the future basis on the Spanish context. I don't know how to say it, so, but I can compare between both countries. I don't know.
So now that you're mentioning Chile, so you are expecting to find a totally different environment once you get back, because I remember that you did your bachelor's in Chile, and then you came to Spain for the master's and the PhD. So if you go back, do you remember actually huge differences? I mean, compared to Spain, I have no idea how the things are.
But I don't know, because in our lab, yes, mostly researchers are women, or it's not so different the amount of women and the male and female. But I remember, for example,
I'm sorry. The English is not very easy to me, so
don't worry, we will communicate.
The idea is that I can communicate an idea, but if you don't understand me, can you see me? And I try to explain it again.
No worry.
In Chile, in general, I have some curious things because when I studied psychology, about of the 70% was female students, but the teaching staff are the mostly male. And this you can see it in all stages. So in the UV, the difference is not so asymmetry like in Chile, but I don't know if this department is representative to the whole of the university of the country. I don't know if you understand.
No, it's fine. And I have one question more for Raquel, because Raquel is the youngest one, let's say. So she started her PhD 5 months ago at the very start of the pandemic. So that was definitely not a very lucky moment for you. So based on all that, and based on the fact that now this is the first, I guess, Women in Science event that you participated. So as the youngest here, how do you see the future in science, depending on all this implicit bias that you may encounter in your path?
Okay, so just to put things into perspective, I studied psychology, and there, even though all of my classmates were females, the majority of the professors I had were males, and they were also PIs. So, want it or not, this creates the idea that there is like a top position professionally that females can reach. And discussing these topics with some of my classmates back in undergraduate school, some of them have told me that they do not want to pursue a career in academia because they feel like they don't want to compete in a race that they will not win to begin with. But I do not agree with that. Maybe because during my bachelor thesis and my master thesis, I was in the brain lab, which is like the majority of us are women, and I have a PI that was a woman. So I am optimistic about the future, but maybe because I am in this bubble, and sometimes I'm afraid that once I go out to the reality, this will change, and I will see that there are like many more difficulties that the ones that I am experiencing now. But also initiatives like this one, I think they are very important to be optimist and like to give advice to each other. And the thing is, if other people or other females in the past were able to make it, then I think we have it easier nowadays. Not easier, but maybe the problem have changed. Maybe in the past the problem was more explicit, and now it is becoming progressively more implicit, and this makes it more difficult to fight against, maybe. And in the future, maybe the problem is like power dynamics in the laboratory and not whether there are women in science or not. I don't know, but I am optimist about the future, but maybe I'm just naive because of the environment that I am in.
Okay, thanks so much. That was very nice, actually. And I want to ask all of you just one final question so that we can move on because it's already late. So if we go to the next topic, let's say the actions that the initiatives that we could propose. Do you have any ideas of what kind of initiatives would you propose at your lab or at the university? If you have any ideas of how we can foster promote a bit more inclusive and diverse science. Emily, you?
Yeah, so a bit about what I said before, like making sure that like essential events or events that are going to kind of help people's careers or just in general go to talks and like networking, things like that, happen like in the middle of the day when people will have childcare outside of pandemic times. Like I think I know academia is already very flexible, but I think one of the issues is then like the like short-term contracts after the PhD, and also like when you get to the PI level, I don't really know anyone that has ever done like part-time like work as a PI, and I think I don't really see why you shouldn't be able to. Like, I think maybe that would be something that would help people like who wanted to have families, like think more about staying, because there's the option of being part-time and it's not like you have to be full-time or nothing kind of thing. And so that, yeah, those kind of things might just like kind of help people to like think that, yeah, they can do it.
Yeah. So the rest of you, do you want to add some thoughts very briefly for initiatives that you may have seen or that you would like to propose? Yes.
Well, I think it's a long war actually to keep fighting on it, and any small thing to do is a big thing anyway. I know it's a silly idea, but it's just like that. Keep working on it. Educational programs and motivational programs for women to keep encouraging women to stay on science in general.
Okay. So tell me.
I think it's also like what we're doing now is we're trying to raise awareness and help people network and stuff, and this is like a good first step. But it would also be very important that it's followed by like money, no? Because people have to be supported. Like people like underrepresented groups must be financially supported before it's too late for them to get into the career. No, I think we cannot leave it at speaking like about that. I mean, universities should fund specifically underrepresented groups to do research.
Okay, we have to move on because we are already late. Thank you very much for the QA part and for the answers and the fact that you shared your thoughts on all these issues. And I would like to invite now the last part, the seniors again, for some last comments. And then I think I'll find the seniors. Okay. Hi again.
Me.
So now that we entered the topic of the initiatives to be proposed, so for example, regarding the maternity leave and motherhood and the family reconciliation, would you propose any initiatives at the institutional level that could help maybe in this direction?
Maybe I can start. I mean, this would be definitely helpful. I don't know what it would take to actually make it materialize. But I think what I suggest, and I have been part of, is mentoring systems. Now it's primarily something that starts in bigger institutions, I notice. So, for example, in Germany, the Leibniz society has a mentoring system. It now seems to also pop up in the Max Planck Society, but it's not anything that I see in beyond these higher institutional situations. So the question is, can that be done within a country? And should there be more of that across Europe, where people also get together and communicate? I was part of a gender initiative in Norway several years ago. It was super interesting because we also had male participants, and there was a lot of discussion what it actually takes from men to acknowledge that they have their implicit biases, even though a lot of them would say, well, but I'm doing a lot already. So I think I wonder, at least at the European level, whether there's also support for something like that from the European Union per se. I have in this activity in Oslo, there was a representative from the EU. So I think these are the kinds of things that we probably can think about and should think about. But in order for these mentorships to actually materialize, they need to be broken down and made accessible to people, and they need to be known to people. So yeah, that's my proposition, but it's something that I would suggest is a good start, because we haven't talked about many things. What does it mean to be a successful woman in science and having children? I accept for myself a model of oscillations. It goes up and down, and you stay on the ride. But what does it take to do that? So these are the kinds of things we should share. And also, Axel, I want to come back to what you said. Some people, or also Anna, you make conscious decisions to not have children, but then are you becoming a different type of role model than some people would like to see, because you're making a choice for whatever reason. So these are the things we need to discuss. What is a role model?
Can I just
Yes,
comment
yes,
on that?
yes.
Yeah.
To be fair, I mean, that's entirely personal, but it's very funny that I really felt the need to say it out loud, because I really feel like my life a few years back would have been easier if I had seen someone say the same and stand for it. And to be fair, it felt much easier to say it to you than to my mom.
Yeah, I can understand that.
Mariam, since it's the first time that you are on stage, because we had connection issues before. So first of all, thanks for accepting the invitation and for giving this talk today. And so can you explain us how is the situation in Iran? So
yeah, of course.
there are any initiatives?
Well, when it comes to gender bias, of course, it's much more pronounced in developing countries, and my country is not an exception. I mean, maybe the worst thing is that we don't have such policies for creating an equal or diverse academia. I mean, you cannot find such policies in research institutes and in universities, and there are still obvious institutional discriminations against women in terms of hiring and recruitment practices. I myself, it took me 1 year to, I kept applying for different universities and I got rejected. Despite of having the same accomplishments with my male colleagues. I mean, we are a small community and we all know each other. And I think people tend to, somehow when evaluating resumes and CVs, they tend to rate male candidates, the achievements of male candidates higher than the female ones. At least I think it's my feeling. And the other problem in maybe traditional societies such as ours, is the cultural beliefs. There are still cultural beliefs in gender stereotypes, and there are some conservative families who won't allow their girls to, like, maybe to work in a mixed gender workplace, or maybe they won't allow their girls to travel abroad alone to, for example, participate in an international conference, which is very important for your career progress, of course. I was so lucky to have a very supportive dad, very supportive family, and now I'm having the most supportive husband, who is actually very supporting me. We've had progress here. I mean, we are progressing gradually from day to day. Nowadays, especially among young generations, you cannot find those gender stereotypes. I mean, they are still there, but they are decreasing, and men are more supportive. They help in house chores. They take days off to take care of family and children. But there is still a strong competition between having a kid and progressing career, especially in Iran, with those stereotypes. I mean, I myself, I don't have a kid, and there is something in my mind always reminding me that you are 36, you are 37, and it's getting late, you should have a kid. But when I think of my ambitions and my career, I just decide not to have a baby maybe until 65. Yeah, and well, we still have a lot of problems, but despite all the challenges and problems, the pool of female scientists is growing, and actually we have women are overrepresented in undergraduate levels. I mean, 70% women are 70% of graduates are female, but we have problem in senior positions in higher academic levels, which are male centric, and usually, I mean, if you are competitive, you are banished by your male colleagues. I mean, I still can feel that in at least my work environment. Sorry, I talked a lot.
No, it's fine. I mean, you deserve it because you were not before. Thank you so much. I mean, it's interesting to know also what happens in places outside of Europe and the States, because we are focused only on Europe and the States.
Yeah.
But there are women scientists all over the world. So thank you for sharing that. So now, since we are very late, so I would start now we have some questions. So I would like to ask you, so Sophie, maybe there is a question. The COVID pandemic has put much more barriers and challenges to women in academia, particularly for ones who are the main, who have families. How do people think we can fight this and promote career development during these crazy global times?
That's a tough question to answer.
That's a very tough question,
but to me, the pandemic has sort of amplified injustices and biases that have already been there. So it makes it worse, and those who are privileged on many levels have it easier than those who aren't. So I don't think it hasn't created entirely new problems in academia, but of course the majority of if the children are at home, women often take care of them more. So how to alleviate that? I think it's very important to make people aware of that. So in the beginning of the pandemic, there have been all these tweets and messages. Oh, this is a great time to retreat and write your papers and think about your work. And then I've seen lots of tweets where people replied and said, haha, you're funny, I have two young kids at home. So it's important to create this awareness in the first place that how the situation is for people. But then I think the help needs to come from the institutions and from the funding agencies, and this really needs to be acknowledged in an official way, that we cannot expect people to have as many publications in 2020 as we would. I think this needs to be really written in the in evaluation criteria for grants, for example, or selection committees for students or postdocs where, yeah, we really need to think about the criteria and what they mean, especially in those times.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I don't know, with now with COVID, I just have the impression that people with families, they have suffered more than the rest of us. Because
it's hard to say. I feel like it's so different, because I've also talked to people who live alone, and for them, I think it can also be very hard.
That's true. That's true.
Visual reality can be very different. It's not, it's not easy to predict how someone.
Yeah, that's true. Yes. Okay, so I will, if you allow me, I will invite also Kostadina. And I have a final question for Anna, Kostadina, and Axel. So thank you so much for everything, for the roundtable, and for the amazing talks. And I hope to see you soon. So, Kostadina, I hope you're here. I think she's connecting. Yes. Hello again. So you're the last 3 survivors that have to answer the final questions. Actually, we have more questions, but I don't think that we have the time. I just would like, I mean, your opinion and your ideas on this topic, on what would you propose at the institutional level for the to make it a bit easier for women in science, in terms of family reconciliation, in terms of bias, in terms of whatever. So, Axel, would you like to start?
Yeah, it's a very dense question. I don't know where to start, actually. I think one thing that I've become very conscious of, but it's not at an institutional level, it's at a personal level. I try to be really cautious of who I cite now. It's probably nothing, it probably makes no difference whatsoever, but if I'm given the choice between 2 papers stating a reasonably similar fact that I want to refer to in one of my manuscripts, I try to choose the one with female young researchers to try and encourage them, and because we know that's how the system works. And so I think that hopefully we can then play a little bit with those rules and try and support younger researchers as well. I mean, I don't know. It's so many things. And to be fair, I think one thing that I would like to state maybe is that obviously this is about women in neuroscience, but I really think that we should try and have just more diversity per se, and just try and be more welcoming, more open to that, and have, I mean, depending on the institution, but try and really make a conscious effort to try and include everyone, like even, yeah, and be respectful, mindful, and we are, I mean, okay, there are things that need to be done at a certain time, but we are in a reasonably flexible environment, and we should take advantage of that to be more inclusive, I think. And then, yeah, if possible, try and avoid the biases, and really taking into account maternity leaves, sick leave, and the time spent caring for your family. But hopefully that should and could benefit male researchers as well. But I mean, obviously, main point here is to be more inclusive of women, but everyone will benefit of that ultimately.
Thank you. So I have a last question for Anna and Kostadina. So there's a question on the chat. If there are any effective bottom-up strategies for combating the gender imbalance in the departments, not rely only on the be twice as good mantra. And since you work, I mean, Kostadina already mentioned that compared to Greece at least, and I can confirm that, I can believe that, definitely. It's more gender balanced, the situation in Sweden. How do you know any policies any strategies that you have there?
Yes. So the Swedish state is quite good in the maternity leave for both parents. But there are opportunities for minorities. So there are scholarships that are dedicated to minorities. Also, I know that certain foundations that give grants and startup grants, they try to keep the gender balance. So they try to be 50-50 on the people that will select to fund their postdoctoral research or their lab. And also the eligibility criteria, especially when you had children, they are quite good for some of the grants. So I also know that also the European Union extends your eligibility, the time that you can be eligible. I think 1 year and a half for every kid you had. I don't know if it is sufficient because I don't have kids, but I think it's something that should be taken into account in all applications at all levels, also for PhD funding as well.
Yes, this should be important also. So Anna, do you know of any strategies that you have there in Belgium?
Yes, so I think overall at the university level, there is quite some like a motivation to include, for instance, parity between male and female. So for instance, the one which I know personally is that on every PhD committee, there is supposed to be 50% male and female examiners. So that's why, for instance, my female colleagues and me, we often serve on the PhD committees. And from more bottom-up initiative, I think even in our department, there is recently people have started well-being and diversity initiative, which seems very welcome. So I think there is much more of like this start to really acknowledge this issue and to somehow combine. I think people started to realize that combining this diversity with well-being, that as kind of promoting diversity also increases well-being of many, many people. And especially, for instance, in our department, there is a lot of international postdocs compared to, let's say, PI or even a PhD. So I think these two things somehow very closely come together, diversity and well-being of all the postdocs and researchers. So I think that's really indeed very welcome.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Nadia, I wanted to share just a very quick story. I was in so there is a conference in motor control that it's very, very male oriented, and I really like this conference, so I try to go when I can.
I know this conference. You have been retweeting this conference many times, I think.
Yes, so I remember at some point, especially the first years I've been there, I think it was 2017 and 2018, like there was an over-representation of male researchers. There were very few women, but really few. So there was this female PI there. She's Tamar McKean. You might know her. She's a PI in London, and I think she's also a very good role model who started the discussion openly, like why there are so few women. I don't believe that there are very few women working in motor control or motor prediction or sensory motor integration, etc. So we have to change it. And she had a very passionate talk, and I want to say that it was very effective because the next year, the conference tried to establish this 50-50% gender balance in the talks and in the poster presentation, and they also created this new scheme for scholarships for minorities. So I think discussion is very important from wherever it comes.
This is how it starts, right? I mean, this is how things start and get moving, I guess. Thanks. Yeah. I mean, yeah. Thank you so much for everything. I thank you for the talks. Thank you for all the thoughts that you have shared with us today. And I hope we will meet again soon in another conference. So let me invite now my friend and colleague and co-organizer, Stephanie. Ciao. Just to say the goodbye. And Stephanie, where are you? I'm here. Okay.
Hello again.
Okay, it's the end of the day officially. We survived.
It went well, no?
Yes. Okay, so wanna start with the closing words because I've been talking for a lot of time.
Yeah, I mean, we wanted to thank everyone for attending the event. We were really happy about how many people signed up and about what great speakers we had, and people were so happy to participate, and we were really like positively surprised and honored that people were involved. And we also wanted to thank the Brain Lab, our supervisors, and all our colleagues, because I mean, you know, we were organizing this as a group of PhD students, but yeah, it was nice of our supervisors that they let us invest time in this, and supported us, and the Institute of Neuroscience supported us financially at the University of Barcelona, and the SENC, that is the Spanish Society for Neuroscience, who came up with the initiative and who helped us to promote the event. What else?
Nothing. I think you just said everything.
Yeah.
Thank you all for joining us today. To our friends and colleagues that co-organize with us. And well, we wish we could have a proper social event afterwards with beers and wine, but unfortunately, we're still in the middle of the pandemic. So stay safe, and we hope we will get to have another gathering about women in science and when everything has gone back to normality. Thank you, and have a nice evening.
Bye-bye.
Ciao.